This is Pokemon Fused Dimensions 2.0. I wanted a slight change of pace from Pokemon Infinite Fusions, so I decided to play another fusion game set in the Kanto region. To add a little spice, I'm going to be doing this run as a shiny only hardcore Nuzlocke. If you've seen this game already, you might have noticed the starters are a little different, because they are. It's Pokemon Fused Dimensions 2.0. So it comes with new starters, new fusions, and just new all around.
A few inches later.
Oh, and would you look at that, after genuinely several hours of resetting, we've got our shiny starter. Okay, so I was gonna name it SHEX, sorta like a mix of sheep and gex, but for fear of stumbling on my words and getting demonetized, its name is
If this were a plane crash, I could eat the other passengers.
As we grab Oak's parcel, you can already see that every wild Pokemon here is fused. Of course, I can only catch and use the first shiny ones I encounter in battle though. While I'm allowed one encounter per route, I'm probably not going to get every encounter on account of the fact that I'm lazy. Anyways, y'all are here to see some awesome fused shinies, so let me get this Marshambi, who I'll name Blackpink. I mean, come on, how you like that for our first encounter? With that first edition, I made a pit stop to beat up our rival over on Route 22 too, which ended up being a really easy fight since Blackpink is seeming more and more like an early game monster the more I use it.
I am now the alpha.
From there, we headed upwards through Viridian Forest, snaking our way through a few trainers, and where we saw a couple new interesting fusions, but none that sparkled. After that, we arrived in Pewter City. Okay, so going into this game, I didn't know that the gym leaders were different because instead of fighting someone that definitely looks like Brock and is in a rock-themed gym, I realized it was a flying gym. So the gym leader ended up being Faulkner, but since he looks like Brock, I'll just call him Fop. Okay, I realized that my naming conventions thus far haven't been the best. Like I said, Blackpink seems like an early game monster. So I hit all of Faulkner's Pokemon with that doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Why do I do this to myself? I spammed Ice Punch. That's it. Bing bang boom, and we got our badge and Rock Tomb because we buried those birds? Eastwards to Route 3 and Mount Moon, there were a lot of trainers sprawled around, so I was forced into a few fights with them, which isn't really a big deal. That said, evolved into Groffy.
Nothing attracts the ladies more than a dirty dighty.
Oh, there also happened to be a new patch of grass, and I figured we're due for a new Pokemon. Enter Rat, the Electran, who I realized later on was not a rat. Anyways, its color palette is super clean, so I had no complaints adding another electric type to the team. In Mount Moon, there were some cool Pokemon fusions, primarily a lot of different rock types, but none of them actually sparkled, which sucks for me, I guess. Look, I'm not gonna go over the whole Rocket subplot here, I'm sure you all know it by now. Plus, we got all these cool fusions to look at anyway. There was a little hiccup with my starter that almost ended up with it fainting, but it's all good.
Not even close, baby!
For my toils, I was given a choice between the two classic fossils. Obviously, I picked the Helix fossil. Now it's time for Cerulean City. I decided to do the rival fight before the gym leader since I figured it would be more interesting. Sub led with his Herfairy, so I figured I'd stay in with Rat, even though it got intimidated. The Poison Sting definitely wasn't doing as much damage because of it, and because it literally has 15 power, but the poison was definitely helpful. Other than that, I continued to just abuse how powerful Blackpink is. I mean really, this thing with its typing and this moveset can easily shut down a team. Anyways, it's time to head into Cerulean City Gym. In the gym, I basically skipped as many trainers as possible, and leveled myself up to the level cap, which let Rat evolve into a bigger rat. I like the black and blue better, but black in any color is cool honestly. Now it's time to take on, Bugsy, I guess. I realized my lack of Nuzlocking experience is showing because I fully thought that Ice was super effective on bug types for some reason. It didn't really stop Blackpink from doing its thing, but I still felt really stupid nonetheless. The Shuckle fusion could have been a problem with rollout, but luckily the Paralyze came in and Blackpink was able to stay healthy with Draining Kisses, securing our second badge along with another mismatched TM. Nugget Bridge was easier than it should have been, which is definitely my fault because in retrospect this was probably supposed to be done before the gym. You know what? No. Let's just say it's more challenging this way since I have to somehow not go past the level cap. After trekking through the slew of trainers on Nugget Bridge and the following route, seeing some new fusions along the way, I made it to Bill's house, helped him unfuse with his Pokemon, and got the SSAN ticket. There was a twig in my way so I had to go all the way around just to beat up a single team Rocket Grunt to progress further in the world. On Route 6, I ran around for a bit so I could add Brad, our third electric type to our team. Well, at least this one has 2 immunities. With our new team member, we made our way into the SSN to get the cut HM. But we got stopped by our rival before reaching the captain. This battle really wasn't different from the Nugget Bridge fight. Rat got some poison stings off until it finally poisoned her fairy. I switched to blackpink since I thought it would be using a normal type move, but it didn't. Regardless though, the rest was basically a sweep. I don't record my voiceovers concurrently with my video, so I don't know how long I need to talk through this segment, but we'll say that the battle is just about done now. With Sub out of the way, we rubbed off the captain and he gave us the cut HM, which would give us access into the third gym. As usual, the third gym has one of the most poorly designed puzzles in a gym, and to add insult to injury, in line with the rest of the gym battles, this gym leader was Whitney, notorious for being an annoying gym leader with her rollout milk tank. Hopefully she doesn't have one. She led with Oddpur against Brad, who took it out easily with a couple of super effective sparks. She then sent out the behemoth known as Kartank, which, luckily for me, Brad was able to break through a track to U-turn out into Blackpink. A quick Thunderwave to stop a stab boosted rollout chain, and Draining Kisses to keep itself healthy eventually whittled it down. The next Pokemon was pretty inconsequential, getting taken out with a few Ice Punches, and her last Pokemon, Chenladin, was a bit more of an issue, putting a couple of my Pokemon to sleep, but eventually Rat was able to come out and finish off the battle to secure another gym badge. After that though, I once again got a bit lost, so I ended up going into Diglett's cave. I mean, somewhere along this hike I realized this was definitely the longer path, and I could have went from Vermilion City back to Cerulean City, but this longer path would be more encounters and thus more chances for shinies. I mean look, there's this— I didn't get any shinies. Anyways, I headed to Route 9 since that's probably where I'd need to go. I took some time to try and get a new Pokemon and I eventually did, introducing Dogfather, because him and his pink suit seemed like they'd make an offer I can't refuse. Thinking about it now though, I think I'd rather have called him Pink Guy, but oh well.
Pink Guy! Pink Guy! Where are you? Hey, boss.
We made it to the rocky tunnel entrance. So, because of my little shiny Nuzlocke limitation here, I didn't have the 10 Pokemon requirement to get the ability to flash, so I pretty much had to raw dog this cave. Thank goodness for my ability to use echolocation though, see? Right. Anyways, the map I used didn't mark any of the trainers, so I'm pretty sure I ended up running into every single one possible. That's okay though, since A, I get EVs, and B, it's a good opportunity to keep yapping while you can see some of the cool new fusions I encountered in the wild and in these battles. Woo! All the way up until the point where I made it out of the cave and ended up in Lavender Town. So one big thing in this town is that it has the name Raider, which means Ah doesn't need to be Ah, and can now be Jeep like I had intended. Well, other than the Shex idea. In Pokemon Tower, we found Sub mourning the loss of one of his Pokemon, I think. And so naturally, we squared up with Sub again to make him mourn another Pokemon. He led with Her Fairy once again against Rat again. Except this time, it decided to keep spamming the gambling move like a middle-aged man in Vegas. But it eventually went down to Poison Stings. Mr. Boot got pretty low against Rat, but Rat also got too low, so I had to swap him out for Blackpink to finish it off. Oh. Coursefleur was a simple Shadow Punch away from fainting, and the following Steelmit took a single Draining Kiss. Pretty inconsequential. His final Pokemon was Zublu, which was easily taken down with an Ice Punch. Pretty easy fight if I do say so myself. We did pretty much everything we needed to do in Lavender Town for now, so eastward— wait, never eat stinky waffles, I mean westward onto Route 8 we go, where I decided to look for a new encounter. There were a lot of solid fire types I encountered which would make for a great addition to our team in terms of coverage, so the game decided to give me the normal and psychic type Pokemon Woolita, which I named MLP. I'll let you decide what the acronym stands for. One underground path later and we're in the Team Rocket infested Celadon City. I beat up the grunt that was inconspicuously staring at a poster and who inconspicuously disappeared to the right of the building. Taking a peek at the poster, and lo and behold, I found a secret lever in said poster and went, that's not my problem, and left to do some shopping. I'm just saying, in real life, that's probably what you should do. And I mean, come on, getting a Thunderstone to evolve Rat into a Rat King feels appropriate here. See, this is normally the part where I'd make some sort of Erika simp joke, but she's literally a trap. It's Morty. Morty led with an Esprevis that confused and looked mean at the Dogfather. While it was able to OHKO it with an Assurance, it got too low from Confusion and Leech Seed to do anything to the Pangtrode. so I swapped into Geep since I figured it could resist most of Pangtrode's moves. I wasn't wrong, but I realized it also resisted Geep's moves, so blackpink time. Or so I thought until I got parried twice. Finally though, thanks to Brad's plucking, Pangtrode went down. A U-turn out into Rat to thief the Meowmagius for a super effective feint, and a couple of more thieves on the closing Curse Gauss closed out this battle and earned us another gym badge. So as it turns out, the secret staircase from before the gym battle is in fact my problem. So I went down the creepy staircase like every 10-year-old should. Rocket Base was basically a series of player moving tile puzzles with a grunt on the lowest floor with a key card. After beating him up and taking the key card, we gain access to the elevator to face off against the Rocket boss. So I guess this was to be expected at this point, but the leader of Team Rocket is Claire. She opened up with Axe Dower, which went down with a couple of Dragon Breaths from Brad. Up next was Larble, which was pretty scary, so Brad U-turned out into Geep, which got kinda low, but survived thanks to Giga Drain. Her final Pokemon was Gorsa, which is a mouthful by the way, but it went down to one Draining Kiss from Blackpink. Before leaving, a Silph Scope came out of, well, I don't want to know where, meaning we've got to head back to Lavender Tower. In Pokemon Tower, we were finally able to progress and see what those ghosts were. Surprise, surprise, they were various ghost-type Pokemon fusions. While a lot of them were pretty cool, none of them shined, so I didn't get an encounter. I didn't want them anyway. I have Blackpink. There was a really big ghost camping the last set of stairs that ended up just being a weird silly birdfish. But that weird silly birdfish ended up being pretty spooky. However, with a lot of switches, as I'm probably showing on the screen right now, it eventually went down and we were allowed to go up the tower. After beating up the last 3 grunts at the top floor holding Mr. Fuji hostage, we were rewarded with the Pokeflute, and a Mega Ring in this version it seems. It was time to make the long journey over to Fuchsia City now. I tried avoiding the silly little fishermen, but I kinda did a bad job of that and had to fight a lot of their silly little fish
I'll have
Pokemon.
sashimi.
Anyways, we came face to face with what seemed to be a regular Snorlax, but it turned out to be a Snorlax Beartic fusion. And so, I took the only reasonable course of action. I stole its food and beat it up. Continuing onwards, I did a much better job of avoiding the trainers, and I even got a Super Rod, which will come in handy in like 10 seconds. A little bit of ninjaing later, and we've arrived in Fuchsia City. So my team is severely lacking in its water type coverage, so using this Super Rod, I could go into the Safari Zone to fish for a Sabini, the only encounter in this pond. Several running aways later, and I found one. His name will be Bond. Oh, I also had to thief an Intellite for later. With all the Zone 1 stuff done, I ran around collecting all the random items in the Safari Zone. The Safari Zone in this game is really cool. It's got quite a few cool fusions, and I'm pretty sure some or all of the starters from Fused Dimensions 1 and 2 are in here, you know, in case you guys want to download the game. Anyways, we secured the HM Surf Award at the end of the zone, as well as the old man's gold teeth, and upon returning them, he gave us HM Strength as a reward. It was at this point that I realized that I kinda freaked it and I should probably do Team Rocket first, so I had to backtrack. But I'll just use movie magic and some anecdotes for any important things that happen in between. First, I robbed another Snorlax of its leftovers using Thief, I blackmailed this innocent girl into giving me her HM Fly, and then was politely given tea from this old lady, which I then used to bribe the guards to let me into Saffron City. Now it was time to storm the castle, that is to say, raid Silphco. This time around, it's just a teleporter maze to get to this highest floor. This took me longer than I'd like to admit, but while you watch this little sped up segment, I learned that if I say subscribe, then the subscribe button lights up. If I say like button, then the like button lights up. I just kinda wanted to see if it would work for me more than anything else. Anyways, we eventually made it to the 7th floor and fought against Sub. Once again, he led with Stout Fable, yet again against my Rat. In spite of Intimidate, I decided to press on with spamming the super effective Steel-type move Cut to eventually take it out. As Golbaria came in though, I went for Draining Kiss with Blackpink to do damage and stay healthy. Next, with Wheelgore, I got my Parahacks in and tested out different moves until I got to Draining Kiss, which just one-shot it. Then with Curse Gauss, it was the same as the other rival fights with just a couple of Shadow Balls basically. However, against Mr. Race, I decided to stay in to try and get Para off, which paid off with Blackpink surviving on red, and switching to let Bond get a Surf in before U-turning out to let Brad get the finishing crunch to take it out. Moving on from there, we go right into a battle with Team Rocket Boss Claire. She leads with Axe Tower against Geep, mainly because I was hyperfixated on Jeep's Dragon-type Dual Chop, though anticipating a heal and relying on the non-100% accurate Dual Chop wasn't smart,
Someone needs
but
a
Discharge was
Band-Aid.
able to finish it off. Sliggering came out, and I gotta admit, it's a pretty interesting looking fusion. Jeep stayed in for one Dual Chop before I got antsy from the special defense drop and swapped it out for Rat. It got a Discharge with Para off, but Dragon Pulse is very spooky, so Brad time. I got a free switch in since Sliggering used high horsepower, which got an easy pluck feint from Brad. The Rock-type Larble came out, which was Brad's cue to U-turn out into Dogfather to revenge it for a Moxie boost, which helped it take out the incoming Pup Bite with its Moxie-boosted Revenge. From here, I decided we haven't really sat down to do any solid catching session. To kick us off, I found a Muto on Route 14 that is fused as this sort of abomination, or mistake as I named it. On Route 13, I found a Laranat that I named Eye-Emoji,
You
on
know,
account
these
of her big ol'
missions are
eyes.
really cutting
Heading all
into
the way
my
back to Route 1, I
V
caught a Bungella named Spaghetti. It looks like it's pesto flavored. On Route 22, I found a Citado, which I named Piss because, well, I mean, you could see the colors in the name. And last up for the time being was Speep, the Butterite. I have no explanation for this name, honestly. With that, it's time to get back on track with our badges, starting with the Saffron City Gym. Surprisingly, I got through the entire teleporter puzzle without having to fight any trainers and arrived at Jasmine. She led with a Tortozone against Dogfather, the resident fighting type who was able to take it down with a boosted Revenge. The following X-Gun Mega also went down after Revenge and Sucker Punch thanks to the Moxie boost. I may have not known that the leaders would also have Mega Pokemon, so I kept Dogfather in against the Mega Meta Slash. It did okay with its Sucker Punch, but I completely forgot that Metagross gets Bullet Punch, so we suffered our first loss. On a more positive note, we can now unveil our new Mega Starter, who's looking
I'm a manly
really,
man.
really cool. And not to mention, it's quite strong, being able to take out the Mega Metaslash and her final Pokemon with its Giga Trains. Just like that, there's a 5th badge. Since we lost Dogfather, we might have lost our only fighting type currently, so yeah, that's not great. Eye-Emoji came in to replace Dogfather, so there's that. Oh, good timing. Speaking of fighting types, Chuck the fighting type gym leader was up next. Claymape came out first, so Brad just used Fly. Convenient because there's no HM replacement items in this game, and because it gives a free turn of leftover recovery. Not so conveniently came a Pseudo Wear, so I U-turned out into Geep. After Mega Evolving Geep, a Giga Drain was all it needed to take out Pseudo Wear. That said, the Toxicroak came out, and after surviving a discharge it swaggered Geep, so I figured I'd switch back into Brad. A single Fly was all it needed to take it out. Then Gigachamp came out, so it was time to U-turn back into Geep. Like the little smarty pants Chuck is, Gigachamp used Bulk Up, which is pretty spooky. Unfortunately for him, Mega Geep with Giga Train has a little illness known as Built Different. Bam, badge number 6. With this badge, the level cap goes up, so it was time to get some evolutions in. First up was Eye-Emoji, who cocooned or whatever into Volcamoth, a clean black and yellow colorway again. Next was Bond, who evolved into Intellite, preferring his drinks shaken, not stirred. Yes, I know it still looks as odd as Inteleon, but boy is it strong, just you wait. And by wait, I mean watch me try to get my Mount Moon encounter. See, I realized that Rat, while cool and a staple of fused dimensions, mine had a horrible nature. Right now, it's basically just an HM holder, so I figured Mount Moon could be a good place to get some sort of rock, steel, or ground type to take its place. Oh, also my clipping software was freaking out, so yeah, just imagine that this is me catching the Roggen Chop. I leveled it up and got it evolved using a link cable I thiefed off of a non-shiny Roggen Chop. And from the Pokemon's name, I think you can tell why I named it Giga Chad. With that, it was time for a quick surf over to Cinnabar Island. There was a Pokemon lab here that I wanted to check out real quick. They offered to revive Lord Helix, but for fear of it not being shiny, Lord Helix will lay dormant. Moving onwards into Pokemon Mansion because the gym is locked, I basically walked straight towards every item I could find, which included an assortment of performance-enhancing drugs, along with some DVDs. Oh, right, and there was a key too. The gym was pretty easy. I accidentally chose to battle the first trainer because I didn't know where the quiz was, but then I just did the quiz the rest of the way until we arrived in front of Price. Going into this battle faced against Pylorupt first, my only plan was to bulk up and sweep with Giga Chad. But you know, plans are just plans, so after taking out Pylorupt, I had to swap into Blackpink to try and take down this behemoth Mega Snortic. With some luck on the paras and a few draining kisses for extra damage and survivability, it was down to about half health, but Blackpink finally went down. Giga Chad came back for a quad-effective Brick Break now that it's faster thanks to Para to take it out. Wardeer's up next, so I swapped into Brad since it looked like it would know Zen Headbutt. Then, it's my favorite time of day, aka spam fly and bank off leftovers recovery. I may have forgotten that Price still had a full restore, so I accidentally U-turned out, but that's okay. Now this gives me a chance to show off Mega Bond. A quick surf finished off Wardeer, and even was able to OHKO the Memorup to finish the battle. That's another gym badge. With a loss on our team and a badge under our belt, we were shuffled to one island by Bill, which is to say I didn't get a chance to put Blackpink in the dead box since the PC on the islands are broken, so I walked around with a corpse for a while, which is a bit morbid if you think about it. Honestly, I don't remember or know anything about the island stuff, but the islands are called 1, 2, and 3 islands, which feel a little lazy to me, but you know, what do I know? It's basically going from one island to the next, and on the 3rd island there were a biker gang of Gen 1ers or something. Basically had to take down like 3 or 4 grunts and then take down their boss who had a couple of cool fusions in his pocket. On that note, I was finally allowed to use the PC, so I put Blackpink away and whipped MLP out. Anyways, while getting it up to level, it evolved into Dubidash, which, in spite of its massive horn and ramming things, cannot learn Cut. Nevertheless, we proceeded onwards into Berry Forest to retrieve the little girl who was being accosted by this Pangtrode, and with that, we've completed our 1, 2, 3 island side adventure. Oh wait, these are the Sevi Islands, aren't they? Since we're out and about anyways, I figured we could visit Mount Ember. Oh look, a random shiny. So that's our Kindle Road encounter, which I named Icy Hot. I don't think I'll use it though, since I'm pretty sure it's weak to nearly every type in existence. Mount Ember was quite a trek, but eventually we ended up at the top face to face with a legendary. Yeah, I mean, it's not shiny and wasn't really that strong anyways with that 4 times weakness. Instead, I sought out a different legendary, or well, one of the 2 legendaries you can find here. And as you can see, we ended up finding Zekia first. Well, actually I found a shiny Dubidash first, but it's dupes thanks to MLP. After wasting all of my Ultra Balls, I ended up just tossing a Master Ball at it and named it Brad Jr. because, well, let's just say Brad is gonna go into retirement. Now it's time to take our new addition for a spin with the final gym leader in our adventure. I wonder who it could possibly be. Oh, would you look at that? Surprise, surprise, it's the Team Rocket leader Claire. Would have never expected that one. The Team Rocket boss led off with Pup Bite. So I had Brad Jr. just spam Dragon Claw. Then this monster known as Mega Tyranchop came in and things got a little interesting. I had Gigachad tank the inevitable rock type move and get a Brick Break in. And predicting a heal, it used another Brick Break. Now I chose to send in MLP who could just take some hits and get a little extra damage off with Fairy Wind, but I basically sacked it for an easy swap. Then Brad Jr. came out again and got a lucky crit Dragon Claw on it. Next was Fraxdoom, which means even more Dragon Claws. Funnily enough though, the Sandstorm finished it off. Sliggering was up now, which meant Dragon Claw time yet again. Literally only started using Fly because I ran out of Dragon Claw PP. Anyways, the timing worked out because the final Pokemon Kinganium was only able to withstand 1 Fly, and that signified the end of our gym challenge. I didn't really have any great replacements for MLP, so I figured since we're going into Victory Road that I might as well bring the HM Holder Rat back for now. And as we head towards Victory Road, we're stopped by our rival. Look at that, Stout Fable again, who would have guessed it? Right, so Iemoji came out to dance a bit and take out Stout Fable. Then against Mr. Race, she did half its health before it bounced, so I swapped into Rat to take the hit and just Toxic it before going into Brad Jr. to stall out the Toxic. Landchops came out next, but Brad Jr. is too low, so it was Gigachad's turn and boom, easy Stone Edge OHKO. Wheelgore, light work. Jeep tanks the Solar Beam and oh, that's kind of a lot of damage. Right, in comes Bond again, this time going Mega and Shadowballing the Golberia, Shadowballing the Curse Goss, and surfing the Wheelgore. Now that's an easy fight. Okay, but like, a couple more excursions couldn't hurt, right? Glad you're on board. Don't worry, I'll make these quick and painless. First up was to go to Seafoam Island and solve the little boulder puzzle. I may or may not have had to look up a guide for this last part, but eventually we found both Ice Beam and our second Regidog, Suisteel. It wasn't shiny though, so I just beat it up. Next, time to head over to the power plant. I wanted to see if I could get an Eve Tom that I could evolve into something to round out our team. But I ran into a shiny Timkit, so that sort of ruined the plan. And the shiny isn't even that different from the regular in its base form. Anyways, last Regidog. Rice? I guess would be how it's pronounced. Almost took out Gigachad, but we managed to beat it up using Rat. See, that wasn't so bad. Okay, actually Victory Road this time around. I noticed that a lot of the trainers, maybe all of them, were references to PokeTubers. More importantly though, they had actual teams that could feasibly beat me, so I avoided most of them when I could. Once I saw the light of the Indigo Plateau, it was time to go back around and see what I could go to fill Rat's place for the Elite Four. In Victory Road, I was low-key hoping for anything other than X-Skin Mega, but reality is often disappointing. I then moved on to Pokemon Tower for my next option, which worked out to be a Duscon I named Tiny. I evolved it into Duscon 2, but not further since I want this to be a pretty bulky mon. For our final preparations, I wanted to snag an Eviolite. Conveniently for me, there's a trade that needs a Golcate, so enter Piss the Citata. Trade it away, get a stinky non-shiny, steal its item, release it into the wilderness. Done. After getting up to a reasonable level for the Elite Four, getting all my moves and items sorted, it was time to start the onslaught of battles. First in the Elite Four was Annabelle. Their first Pokemon was Wobbuthorn, and after Mega Evolving Bond, he made quick work of it with a couple of flamethrowers. Jinzucot was next, and quickly fell to a single flamethrower. The Meowmagius got a Psychic off, but a few Surfs got Annabelle's full restore and Meowmagius' life. Wardeer came next and thrashed Bond into the red, but since it's locked into Thrash, I got a free swap into Tiny. Tiny was wisp to finish it with its Will-O-Wisp Confuse Ray Hex combo to bring out their ace Beedrazan. Even though it did Mega Evolve, Tiny is too bulky, and its bread and butter combo was able to take it out eventually. And just like that, the first Elite Four was done. Next up was Janine, who didn't fit in the initial fight screen. Her first Pokemon was the Moontress, which didn't get a chance to do anything thanks to Mega Bond's flamethrower. When Crobaria came out, I decided to gamble in Ice Beam since I knew it probably had a Dragon-type move for me. It ended up being faster, but both Mons were left on red. I figured it would take a turn to heal it, so I used Ice Beam again before switching out into Tiny to finish it off with its burn. The Sneasler was up next, so I did the usual Tiny special, which eventually took it out with a Hex. Next up, Argoro. I think you can guess what I did with Tiny here, but eventually it got a defense drop on Tiny and healed off its burn, signaling Tiny's time to leave. I figured Giga Chad would be a good option, but I also forgot Argoro is a fighting type, so an Earthquake from Giga Chad and a Cross Chop from Argoro left both Mons in the red. After almost getting punished for setting up a Quiver Dance on Eye Emoji, it was time to finish it off with Flamethrower to get the final Pokemon Buttering. I'm fairly certain this is like Ice Bug or something, but it didn't matter since a Flamethrower was all that was needed to finish this battle. Third was Mina and her pink petal. She led with Rovion, so that'll be the fastest U-turn in the West for Bond into Eye Emoji. From there, this battle just becomes a simple sweep for Eye Emoji after having stacked up its Quiver Dances. Honestly, this is the only reason why I'm using Eye Emoji, and I'm freaking glad that it finally got a chance to shine. I mean, pretty much it's just Volcarona but a little weaker, right? The last of the Elite Four and the former champion, Marnie? I don't get the theme here, honestly. Whatever. After scoping out Toxicroak's dry skin, Bond used Flamethrower as it's essentially super effective. However, I didn't think the incoming Haxdoom would be faster than Bond, so it couldn't U-turn out and fainted. Now in with Tiny, who got its revenge by doing the things that it does best, which is be annoying. The incoming Oversage definitely had some move for Tiny, but I figured a Will-O-Wisp couldn't hurt. While the Crunch wasn't bad, it got a defense drop, so I swapped into Brad Jr. to take it out with a single fly. The Abdrio went down easily with a single Thunderfang, and finally her Kragaskan just took a couple more Thunderfangs to finish this fight. Now, onto the long-awaited champion fight and final rival fight against Sub. As usual, he led with Stout Fable, but I led with Geep, who instantly set up a light screen. Then I moved into spamming Discharge while it piled up Cosmic Powers. Once it got into the red with its own takedown, I knew it would heal, so I took my chance to get a free swap into Tiny. After a quick burn and confuse, I wanted to try and sweep with Eye Emoji again. After setting up as many Quiver Dances as possible and taking out the Stout Fable, it went up against the Landchops, who survived a boosted Flamethrower and took out Eye Emoji. Feels like karma for Brad. Giga Chad was next and couldn't finish it off with a single knockoff, so it took a lot more damage than I actually wanted to before it actually finished it off. Crobaria came face to face with a menace known as Tiny, and just perish-solved. Basically got statuses off during the perish time, before both swapping out to change the fight to Brad Jr. vs Wheelgore, which ended up being pretty easy, just one fly was all it needed. Mr. Race has always been a bit of an issue for me for some reason, so I opted to try and paralyze it with Thunderfang. And then Brad Jr. got frozen, so Tiny time. Okay, this part was the most boring war of attrition ever between Mr. Race and Tiny. So, spoiler, Tiny wins. Moving on. The Crobaria came back again and only to get taken out by Hex. With Tiny's leftover Perish turns though, I inflicted some statuses onto Kurskos to swap to Brad Jr. before getting Tiny, the MVP of this Elite Four run, back into the battle, as it was the only fitting way to finish this battle. And just like that, we beat our rival for the last time. Our team of sparkly and shiny fusions were indoctrinated into the Hall of Fame, now forever immortalized as the shiniest team to beat Fused Dimensions 2.0. Thank you all for watching.